Oh my God! Have you seen those questions? Are you ready for teaching? When you raise to be a professional teacher, you must have a good plan of your teaching. It's not a piece of cake to make your learning scenario in a night. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone. Still with me in this subject, English for Special Purposes 2020. Today's topic is classroom scene. What actually we're gonna talk here? We will talk about how to plan your teaching learning activity, how to deliver your class in English, and the expression that commonly used in classroom activities. Here are the objectives. You are able to compose the scenario of teaching, and then you perform the scenario in a role play. According to the Constitution number 14 2005, there are 4 teachers' competencies. First, personal competency. This competency relates to the character of teacher. Teacher must be a role model for the students. Number 2, professional competency. It relates to the ability of teacher to plan, do the process, evaluate the process, and also updating their ability to master the content. Number 3, pedagogy competency. It relates to the ability of teacher to understand their student in every aspect. And then the last, social competency. It relates to the ability of teacher to communicate in the society. Actually, what do you need to make a scenario of learning? The key of making scenario of learning is understand the student needs. Here are 6 tips for writing effective scenario of learning. Number 1, create real-life and relevant situations. Number 2, motivate the learners. Number 3, challenge the learners. Number 4, use informal and conversational language. Number 5, use interesting interactivities. And then the last, number 6, use visual graphics. Next, we are going to talk one by one tips. Tips number 1, create real-life and relevant situation. Make your scenario as real as possible. A scenario is essentially a story with characters and situations, usually accompanied by questions that challenge the learner to respond. Tip number 2, motivate the learner. A well-written scenario should motivate the learner to action. As previously mentioned, a scenario usually poses problem situations for learners to respond to, and they are expected to do so by recalling their previous knowledge. Thus, an effective scenario motivates the learners to believe that they have the necessary skills to overcome any problem situation they encounter. Tips number 3. The scenario must challenge the learners. A scenario will only work and help learners retain information when it challenges them. Do you feel challenged in this subject? Tips number 4. Use informal and conversational language. It's generally a good idea to use conversational and informal language while writing scenario. Learners can easily relate to the conversational style and find it easier to engage with the content. It also makes the scenario interesting and informal, so learning happens in a comfortable way. While in some cases the overview of the scenario presents in a narrative manner, even then the tone and style should remain formal. Tips number 5. Use interesting interactivities. The most common form of interactivity in this case will be questions and answers. But you can use any other strategies to generate interactivity in your class. Okay, last tips. Use visual graphics. Finally, a scenario becomes much more effective when it's presented with visuals. Scenarios are, after all, stories, and stories are best presented through visual images. Now, we step to the next material, the stages in the teaching-learning activity. There are three main stages: opening, core, and closing session. Let's take a look for each stage. Opening session. Just like the other session, this session can be varied, but in this slide I'll tell you my own style. They are greeting, checking the readiness, opening prayer, and apperception. The expression that can be used for greeting is general greeting, like good morning and good afternoon. Or you can say Assalamualaikum class. You may say a quote to start your class like today is the first day of the rest of your life, or success doesn't come from what you do occasionally, but what you do consistently. I think this is really important part to motivate your student and grab their attention. You can start your class before they have paid your attention. After grade your students, it's time to check their readiness, including attendance and their gesture. You can ask someone who in charge for opening prayer. This commonly happen for early morning class. In apperception, you can remind your student about the last meeting and relate it into today's topic. In this tab, you can mention daily application of today's topic in order they've got a good reason to study with you. Next, the course session. If you were a chef, this stage is the main course of your menu list. You must provide it as good as possible. You can start it by checking their homework, but in the some schools rule, homework already submitted early. Introduce your topic today and don't forget deliver the objectives of your lesson today. This stage also can be varied for the steps. I just show you the example course session if you use problem-based learning. You can read 101 Strategies for Active Learning by Mel Silberman and any other references related. Commonly, grouping can be chosen for active learning or student-centered activity. You must learn how to make a group in your class so that no one of them felt being forced to join into the group, and uphold the principle of fairness. Then you can give a case to be discussed in your class. Presenting the discussion result is important both for the teacher and the students. For the last, in the course session, you must give confirmation about lesson today. Closing session. After confirm for the lesson, you can check their understanding and ask them to conclude about the lesson to start the closing stage. Assignment can be given, but it's not compulsory. After that, tell the student about the next meeting's material before you end your class with closing prayer and farewell. That's all about learning scene. I do hope you can learn more how to build your teaching learning activity. I close this video by mentioning this quote. There are no shortcuts to any place worth going. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.